Here is the Independence Day, July the 4th article. Students, please read along with me in English 2 to 3 times. Thank you. By the middle of the 1700s, the 13 colonies that made up part of England's empire in the New World were growing impatient with the laws and restrictions set by a king 3,000 miles away. They were resentful about taxes imposed upon them. They felt that they should not have to pay British taxes because they were not allowed representatives in Parliament. Their sentiments were expressed in the slogan, "Taxation without representation is tyranny." Many colonists wanted to be self-governing and free from British rule. But independence would be a gradual and painful process. Some colonists could not forget that they were British citizens and felt that they owed allegiance to King George III. Others wanted the protection of the mother country. Yet almost all colonists were dissatisfied with the way they were governed by Britain. Unrest and tensions continued to grow, and by 1765 many colonists had joined secret groups called Sons of Liberty to plan action or even violence against British authority. This angered the king, and he sent more troops to enforce British law. The colonists sometimes taunted the British soldiers or threw stones at them. Finally, two major events strongly united the colonists against Britain and hurried destiny. On March 5th, 1770, British troops fired on an angry group of Boston citizens, killing 5 and injuring others. The incident, called the Boston Massacre, stunned and infuriated the colonists. The second major event involved a tax on tea. Tea was a popular commodity in the colonies, but England's tax laws gave an unfair advantage to one tea merchant. The British owned East India Company. This made the colonists angry, and they decided to stop buying and drinking tea from the East India Company. To dramatize the protest, Samuel Adams and other men of Boston organized the Boston Tea Party. On December 16, 1773, they dressed up as American Indians, boarded an East India Company ship, and dumped its cargo of tea into Boston Harbor. King George responded by closing Boston Harbor and enacting more restrictions and punishments. In addition, he required citizens of Boston to house and feed British soldiers. Representatives in the Virginia colony took the first step toward independence by voting to set up a committee, the Continental Congress, to represent the colonies. The first Continental Congress met in September of 1774 and had delegates from 12 colonies. They drew up a list of grievances against the Crown, and this became the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. In the meantime, colonists continued to organize protests against Britain and to train their own militias. The Revolutionary War began on April 19, 1775, when British troops tried to raid the Massachusetts militia. Colonists were quick to form fighting units and resist the British troops. In May of 1775, the Second Continental Congress met and elected Virginia delegate George Washington to be commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. He led American troops against the British throughout the war. For the next 8 years, colonists fought fervently for independence. They were not as well trained or well equipped as British troops, but they had other advantages. They had a fierce and united purpose. They fought on familiar terrain, and they used new tactics learned from the native inhabitants. They often had no uniforms, but their clothing helped camouflage them in the forests, while the British soldiers, called redcoats, were highly visible in their bright red uniforms. During the fight for freedom, another war, A war of words was being waged in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress prepared a second draft of the list of grievances. John Hancock, president of the Continental Congress, was the first to sign. The document, the Declaration of Independence, was considered treasonous by the Crown, and the 56 men who signed it were in danger of being executed. Yet, on July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress approved the Declaration of Independence, officially breaking bonds with England and forming a new independent nation, the United States of America. Independence Day is celebrated on July 4th because on that day, independence from Britain was officially declared. On July 8, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was read publicly for the first time, and people celebrated. Bells rang out, bands played, and ships fired their guns. People lit candles and set off firecrackers. But the War of Independence dragged on until 1783, when independence was finally won. That year, Independence Day was made a holiday in the 13 new states. But not until 1941 was Independence Day officially declared a federal legal holiday. John Adams, who became the second president of the United States, was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He wrote to his wife, "I believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be celebrated with pomp and parades, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other." John Adams' words may have predicted or inspired future Independence Day celebrations. Early Independence Day, or 4th of July, celebrations did indeed include games and sports events, shows, military parades, fireworks, and the liberal firing of guns and cannons. But the firearms and fireworks caused many injuries and even deaths. So in the early 1900s, citizens convinced officials to prohibit guns and to control the use of fireworks on Independence Day. The phrase, "a safe and sane 4th," became a popular slogan, and it is still used today to encourage safety and common sense on the 4th of July. Today, many cities prohibit fireworks or allow only small items like cherry bombs and sparklers. Some cities organize a local fireworks show run by trained pyrotechnics specialists. Every 4th of July, Americans have a holiday from work or school. Communities and families have all-day picnics with favorite foods like hot dogs and hamburgers, potato salad, baked beans, pie, and watermelon. Afternoon activities would not be complete without lively music, a friendly baseball game or frisbee toss, and maybe a three-legged race and a pie-eating or watermelon-eating contest. Some cities have parades with people dressed as the original founding fathers or early colonists who marched to the music of high school bands. At dusk, people gather to watch the city fireworks display. In many areas of the country, special events take place. For example, a Freedom Festival is held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. Costumed Americans often reenact historical scenes and read the Declaration of Independence for the crowd. In Massachusetts, the ship USS John F. Kennedy may come into Boston Harbor in full sail on the 4th of July, and the Boston Pops Orchestra will play a musical concert of patriotic songs as hundreds of people watch fireworks burst over the water. The Liberty Bell. Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. The sight and sound of a ringing bell on the 4th of July symbolizes freedom to most Americans and brings to mind the Liberty Bell, which rang out in Philadelphia when the new country was born. The Liberty Bell once hung in the old State House, which later became Independence Hall in Philadelphia. It was rung at every important national event, such as presidential elections, statesmen's funerals, and, of course, the 4th of July. The bell came to Philadelphia from a foundry in England in 1752. But the very first time the bell was rung, it cracked. Repairs were made, and for the next 83 years, the bell tolled on special occasions. The most significant, on July 8, 1776, to announce the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Sometimes after 1846, the Liberty Bell cracked again, and it was removed from the bell tower to protect it from further damage. It was placed on display in Independence Hall. Today, the bell is housed in the Liberty Bell Center, which is open to visitors year-round and is part of the Independence National Historic Park. At one time, the foundry in England that had made the bell generously offered to take the cracked bell, melt it down, and cast it anew at no charge. But American officials decided to keep the old Liberty Bell as it was. They felt that the American people loved the old bell and that the crack in the bell was a cherished part of its character and legacy. America the Beautiful. From time to time, it is suggested that the song America the Beautiful be made the national anthem in place of the Star-Spangled Banner. Proponents of this idea argue that America the Beautiful is a better national anthem because it praises the whole country, not only the flag, and it was not written as a result of war. Also, it is much easier to sing America the Beautiful. Was written in 1893 by Catherine Lee Bates, a writer and professor at Wellesley College. While on vacation, she took a ride up Pikes Peak, a mountaintop in Colorado, and saw a spectacular view that few people in those days had the opportunity to see. The spacious skies and purple mountains inspired her to write a poem, which was eventually published. The public loved the poem, and it was often put to music using any tune that fit the lyrics. Eventually, the poem was set to the music of a hymn, Materna, by Samuel Ward, and this is the song that Americans know and love today as the most beautiful tribute to their country.